Hello, and thank you for tuning in. I'm Jody Lavoie, founder of the Grief Company and also Widows in the Workplace. And the purpose of this show, Navigating Work and Grief Together, is to talk about what's hard, to talk about how grief transcends just beyond death itself and touches all sorts of major life changes that we have. And I bring guests on that help you with strategies and services and uh, all that pertains to getting your business in order as it pertains to grief. So today, my guest is Rachel Donnelly, the CEO and founder of Afterlight After Loss Professionals. Welcome, Rachel. Thank you for coming on today.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here, Jody. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh gosh, it's my pleasure. And I like to start with a fun fact. So Rachel's fun fact is she makes amazing fried chicken from her grandma's recipe. So if any of you are around Atlanta, maybe she'll invite you over.
Come
I
on over. I'll
don't
whip some up for you.
know. Perfect, perfect. So you and I met the beginning of this year. I
Hmm.
had a client, a widow client, that was struggling with healthcare bills, that
Yeah.
she was drowning in them, and she owed more in healthcare bills from her late husband than her mortgage. And
Yeah.
oh my gosh. And so you led me to someone that could help her. And so
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. It takes a village.
It takes a village because you don't know that you would ever need those kinds of services or those kinds of people until you do.
Yeah.
And and
Yeah.
knowing where to go and be able to get directed and have answers is just so helpful.
100%. And especially when you're in grief brain, you're experiencing grief fog, and you've experienced one of the worst times of your life, and you're trying to find the right people to help you get the answers, help you solve your pain points. So it's that always brings me joy when I'm able, even if I'm not able to help somebody, if I'm not the right person for the job or the task that they need, to be able to sort of build that continuum of care and say, okay, I'm not the right person, but here's the person in my Rolodex to do that.
Ah, absolutely. And I'm sure you didn't start your career going, I think I want to be in bereavement support.
I did not. No. But it's funny looking back, I feel like my whole life has sort of been leading me to this. And it's, so you look back at that 30,000-foot view and you're like, oh, okay, that's what those pain points in life were, the reasoning behind this. Um, so yeah, my unfortunately I've just experienced several losses in my life that have led me here. My dad got sick when I was 13. I grew up in a very small town where he was the only physician. And so I grew up this very sort of Mayberry sort of lifestyle, which was fantastic. But him being a small town doctor, I used to accompany him on house calls and go with him to the hospital. So I was around a lot of people who were sick or dying. And so every night it was stories from the ER of things where people had made some wrong decisions or things had gone real wrong. And then unfortunately he got sick when I was 13 and passed away when I was 16. And my mom was a young widow. And um, I experienced firsthand the pain points of sort of the unavoidable administrative tasks of death, right? My mom had to sell his medical practice. We had to, decide what to do with his clothes in the closet. And, so all of what his things, his military uniforms, right? Like all of those unavoidable things that you don't know what to do when somebody leaves this earth, right? And so then fast forward to when I was married and had two small children, and I was about to start a brand new job, which afforded me no time off in the first 90 days. And my mom got sick and was diagnosed with cancer and unfortunately had surgery and passed away within the first 6 weeks of that sort of 12-week, no time off policy. So with that, I was in a brand new job where you're really supposed to be showing up then, right? That's when you're supposed to be on your A game. And I was not able to be on my A game. And my mom's death, she was taking care of her brother, my uncle. And so I had become his caregiver and, manage all of his bills and care and doctors. And so I was very much thrown into this world of I'm grieving now both of my parents. I'm dealing with all of the administrative tasks. I'm taking care of a loved one and I'm trying to continue my life, right? With everything that I have on my plate. And there was no time to grieve because you're in action mode, right? You were in, I've got to now, open my mom's estate, settle her estate, go through probate, clean out houses. Now I have to redo my uncle's entire estate plan, right? Making me the power of attorney and healthcare proxy uh and there was no time, like I said, for me to take off from work to really breathe and process what had just happened.
And
Um,
Rachel, at that time, had you had experience in managing estates and all of the things that go with that?
I mean, very little. I had helped my mom, when my grandmother died, and I sort of probably had more awareness of that just based on my growing up. But no, I didn't know what a trust meant or what it meant to, what a power of attorney did versus a will, right? I didn't know all the ins and outs and the legalese and the jargon and what needed to be done, what sequence, what protocol, and sort of how to triage things. It feels like everything is on you. It has to be done all at once, right? And you don't really know where to go. What's the first step? What's the right step, right? So no, I was in
So
complete no man's land.
overwhelming,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
you call these folks for to manage whatever aspect of the estate, and the people on the other end of the line aren't exactly supportive
No.
or sometimes not helpful. And here you
Right.
are grieving too, and they're like, "Can you send that death certificate for the 10th time?" Ugh.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Or you're calling, I remember calling the bank and finally having to yell over the phone. You are not here. My mother is dead. She is dead. She is DEAD. Because they just kept asking to speak with her. And so you're trying to process all of this and then trying to go through this sort of business of death. Um, and it's not straightforward at all. It's full of red tape, bureaucracy, of inconsistencies, and it's can be so complicated. So yeah, it's completely mind-blowing sometimes.
Yeah, and you're trying to manage that, and you have a life and
Yeah.
this new job.
Yeah.
And uh, what did your life outside of managing this estate and working look like then?
Oh, it was a really dark time for me. I had a 2 and a 4-year-old at that time, and they're always getting sick from daycare. And I remember being in the doctor's office, both of my kids had strep throat, right? And my boss is calling me, asking me when you're going to come back in, right? And you're dealing with all of the things, and it just feels like utter chaos, and your world is sort of falling in on you, and you don't even know how to begin digging yourself out.
Oh my gosh. How long would you say it took you to dig out?
Yeah. So I unfortunately, I finally had to leave that job after 8 months. I had never not worked in my life. I had never taken time off when my kids were born. I went straight back to work, after my maternity leave. But I was like, I can't physically do this with the sheer amount of tasks on my plate. So I lasted about 8 months after that. And then I just hit a breaking point to where nothing was going to happen unless I took that time off and dealt with the administrative tasks. My sister had found out she was expecting not too long after our mom passed away. So she was really in no position to dig into some of the things. So even though we were co-executors, it was a lot of it was falling on me.
And that happens a lot for the women,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
I know we'll get
absolutely.
into what you do, but before we do that, I would assume a higher percentage of the estate handling work goes to women, 80%, or I don't know what the percent is.
Yeah, it's
A
funny.
high
I've been
percent.
trying to find an accurate stat on this and still looking for one. I've found a couple of sort of stats that say you're more likely to be the executor if you're the adult daughter. I'm looking for more data-driven stats on that, but just anecdotally, in my work, it usually is a woman is usually my client, right? More times than a man. So it's usually they've been the one doing the caregiving, all things, and then naturally they become the one in charge after the death.
And in your case there, I mean, it sounds like the employer at the time wasn't the most supportive
Wow.
with help, flexible time. I don't know, all of the things.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. I mean, I think I read the average sort of bereavement time is 4 days, right? Um, and I was supposed to have no time off in my first 90 days in this new position. So they were lenient, but the thing is you're having to do a lot of these tasks of settling an estate during normal business hours, right? You're having to call the bank, talk to the attorney, call the funeral home to get the death certificates, right? You're having to do a lot of this in the 9 to 5, Monday through Friday realm, which is when my job took place.
Wow. What an impact, obviously, that has on your productivity at work, your ability to concentrate. You're in a grief brain fog to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so much, and obviously led to you not working there
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
And and that's so unfortunate. So
It
unfortunate.
really is. Yeah. And I mean, not just for, it has an impact, like you said, on productivity. I remember sitting in a meeting one time and just my mind being a million other places of just all the things that I need to do. And you're trying to concentrate on work and you just physically can't, right? And so even though I was there, I was not there, right? My brain was not there. My focus was not there. So yeah, the presenteeism of the impact. I was there, but not really there.
And so would you say that was your aha moment, if you will, for the creation of Afterlight?
It really was. And I mean, it took a couple of years, but with that, then I had to clean out then 3 houses that were in my mom, like one that was my childhood home, our family lake house, my grandmother's home that had been in our family since 1890. Then I took over, moving my uncle. He had his care needs really increased. We had to clean out his 2 homes, move him into a high skilled nursing facility. And going through all these logistics one day, then a couple of years later, after he passed away, I was in the bank trying to open up his estate account. And it took me 6 hours and I was getting nowhere. And they kept wanting, oh, well, you have to do this and this and this form. And I had just like this light bulb moment of why isn't there a quarterback for executors like this that could be here doing a lot of these, like I said, these administrative tasks, keeping me organized, helping move the needle, finding the papers that I needed to sign, maybe faxing them off or maybe calling, the companies. And I just had an aha moment because I was so mad and I was just so angry that I was hitting so many brick walls. And how did they expect somebody to do this who has a job, has a life, has, all this. And I just thought this is a gap in the market. And I would have paid anybody anything at that point to help me with that. I always said, here's all my money. Here's my firstborn, right? Take it all.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah, it really was an aha moment. And I noticed that there was a significant gap in the market.
And I liked your analogy to a quarterback because that's that's what you do. There's
Right.
all these different balls in the air,
Right.
and you help keep them in the air and move them forward and prioritize and all of the things. So, will you tell us a little bit more about? I didn't even know there was an after loss space until I
Nobody does. Nobody
needed
does.
to be there. There's an after loss space, everybody,
Yes, there is.
and it's so important. And so there's a variety of professionals, I guess, that
Right.
operate in this space. So could you
Right.
maybe start there and then
Right.
talk a little bit about your part in that?
Right, right. So of course, we very much try to be very clear about the sandbox in which we operate and where are our lines in the sand, where do we add value, where do we um, collaborate with other professionals. So most of my clients come to me from attorneys, from financial advisors, from other service professionals such as senior move managers or professional organizers or real estate agents, right? So they are dealing with a lot of these clients or individuals who've lost a loved one. They're helping them with some of those pain points and those aspects of settling an estate. But the way that I think a lot of professionals describe these is hand holding, right? And that we're helping the client to do a lot of the things that fall through the cracks of the fragmented roles, right? So the estate attorney is getting of course, submitting the will to the probate court, opening the estate, all the legalese, sending out the notices to the beneficiaries, right? But then they give you a lot of times a task list of, all right, now go call the bank, close these accounts, transfer this account, get the tax ID number for the estate, right? Get appraisals for this tangible personal property. Get the titles to the car transferred over, right? They're giving you this laundry list of, cancel the insurance, close the Netflix account, right? Like all of these things. And you're given this laundry list of 100 plus tasks sometime to complete. So that's where we step in and really create an organized process, sort of a triage, a streamlined process. Okay, under the laundry list of things that have been prescribed to you, let's create a phase one, phase two, phase three, right? Let's do this based on the attorney or the financial advisor, the CPA's advice, and let's help you do the things, right? In sort of a streamlined step one, step two, step three process.
That is so helpful because that huge laundry list, you don't know how to prioritize.
Yes.
So to have somebody like you come and go, okay, yes, there's 100 things. We're gonna
Yes.
just chunk this down. I will hold your hand. And
Mhm.
do you actually call, like make the
Yeah.
close?
100%. Yeah. So we get our clients a lot of times just to give us third party authorization. They'll sign a form that will say, hey, we can act on or communicate on behalf of the estate. And we'll call Bank of America and say, okay, the decedent had these accounts. What is the process for closing them or getting them transferred into an estate account? Or we'll call Vanguard about a retirement account and say, okay, what is the process for doing all of this? So we're either actually doing that sort of proxy work for them or getting the actionable steps. Because of course, a lot of times these custodians are worried about privacy, security, as they should be. And so if there's like, we can't give you any of that information, fine. Can you help me point me to the right form or the link or do I need to fax this in, right? Do I need to courier pigeon or whatever your process is? So we're getting them closer to the goal line and then keeping track of everything in a very organized way to say, okay, have you gotten this back from Bank of America? Have you heard from this company? Did you get your mom's 1099? So you'll be able to file taxes. So we're really trying to keep track of all of those moving pieces.
Wow, so helpful. And that gives the person who's grieving some time for them to have some brain space,
Yeah.
to start to grieve, keep their job, take
Yes.
care of their kids,
Yes.
and do all of the things that are required in your regular life, if you
Yeah,
will.
absolutely. Your own life, and not that you don't love your family member, not that you don't want to, of course, close out their life and according to their wishes, but what people fail to realize is a lot of times they leave these very open-ended things for people to figure out that they didn't want to deal with in their lives. And it's a big problem. And it leaves a lot of work on people, and they don't understand the sheer amount of tasks and time it takes away from their own lives.
So much. And we could spend hours talking about how to prepare
Yeah,
before you die and have
yeah.
as many ducks in a row as you can. But we're not going to go there.
No, we're not going to do. No, we could be here
That's a
for
lot.
years going into that. Yeah,
Oh my gosh. So the clients that come to you, what are kind of their top five of,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of times they don't know their loved ones' assets and debts, right? What do they owe and what do they own? So we're helping them to sort of reverse engineer and find accounts, maybe look through their mail, see statements. We use some software where we can do inquiries and try to find accounts, right? So then we're sort of trying to make an organized list of their assets and debts. So that's number one. They don't know, what is the priority, what needs to be done first, right? Do they, after they've had the funeral, after they've gotten the death certificate, can I do this? Or I've gotten this bill, do I have to pay this right now? And so we're trying to say, okay, let's pencils down, let's get organized, let's put everything into a spreadsheet, let's get everything organized, and then we can figure out the process or the protocol based on the attorney's guidance or what have you. They don't know all the forms that they're going to need to fill out and how they're going to need to be filled out. What do they need? A notary? Do they need a medallion guarantee? So a lot of times we're breaking down the process in sort of layman's terms, right? So what your attorney is telling you is you need to do this, right? So what that means is X, Y, and Z. So we're trying to explain, even though we're not attorneys, we're not taking that place. We understand the process and what needs to be done. Okay, we're sort of translating things sometimes. Um, you know, I the digital asset aspect is huge. People not knowing, oh, okay, I'm like, we're doing a very much of an inventory, an audit of their loved ones' lives. Okay, did they have a Zelle account? Did they have a Facebook account? Did they have, a credit card? Did they have an ancestry.com? So we're really trying to do a very much of a deep dive to figure out, okay, what are all the places and all of the accounts that need to be closed, transferred, and archived? Um,
Wow. I'm just thinking of my own. There's so
there's
many.
so many, right? And especially if they've been locked out of their loved ones' lives, in terms of not knowing the passcode to their phone or email. So us maybe trying to figure out how can we reverse engineer and find out some information that they need. Um, but yeah, simple things, even though it may not be of huge value, sometimes like transferring the title of the vehicle, that, it's like the tiniest things, but that have a ton of steps, right? Can be so daunting to people.
Absolutely. And you talked at the beginning your own personal story about you working and trying to manage all of these things. So let's transition a little bit to for all of those that are in the workplace, are
Right,
managing people going through this, are running businesses that, yes, have people going through this. Uh,
right.
do you know any statistics on, you know, the average time it takes to close an estate,
Yeah,
those sorts of things? Because
right. It's a lot. Yeah. And, there are different, studies and data points out there, but various of 13 to 16 months for an average estate, and if there's litigation or challenges, that of course adds more time. Um, there are various estimates, but I'd say the average number of hours of effort it requires for an executor to settle an estate is around 500 hours
Oh
of
my
time.
God.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. I had no
Yeah.
idea it was that high.
Yeah. And a
500.
hundred plus tasks on average, right? And, an average of 5 phone calls per week. And, I think 6 out of 10 people in one study I read said this took way more time than I ever anticipated, right? Like so many of my clients will say, well, if this isn't done in 2 months, like what does that mean? And so a lot of it is sort of leveling expectations, right? And this may take longer than you hope and you anticipate. But we're going to be here to help maybe get things done in a faster and more expedient way. Because that's the thing. You shouldn't be an expert at this, right? But every time you have to do this process and you've never done it, you're having to reinvent the wheel. But if you have someone who's doing these things every single day, right, that can expedite things.
Right. And obviously people trained in knowing I'm talking to a
Right,
person and can react and support accordingly. And
right, right. And I recently read a stat that the estimated cost of grief in the workplace is 75 billion annually.
yeah, yeah, it is a lost time, lost productivity, absenteeism,
Yeah.
and slowing down. We all know the grief brain. Grief
Right.
actually rewires your brain temporarily.
Yes. Yeah.
And it will get better for those that might be in the thick of it, but it you can't think straight. You can't remember things like you
No,
used to, and you're exhausted
you're
of
exhausted.
or
Yeah. Yeah. And you should be able to go through that grief process.
yes.
You
Yeah,
deserve that. You need that. It's part of it. And while it's very uncomfortable and why people may want to do this busy work to keep their mind off of it, your body needs that to slow down and process that loss. Um, and when you're having to do all these things, I think it can really hamstring your grief process.
very much so. And people that are unaware, who've never been through this process themselves, can surely recognize, okay, they're grieving because they just had a loss,
Right.
but they have no clue about the amount of hours and time and money out of your own
Yeah.
money too
Yeah.
that it
Yeah.
takes to get all of this.
Yeah, it's sort of this double-edged sword. It is expensive to die, not only from getting an estate open, getting the attorney, the actual disposition of the body, but then, the loss of income, right? The loss of, your bandwidth of the time that you're able to generate revenue, generate income, right? So people don't think about that as it's a very expensive life event.
Absolutely. So, how could employers work with you, or how have you had some success in
Yeah, yeah.
that space?
Yeah, so I've actually partnered with several employers who have we've created sort of an employee assistance program or package where we will offer maybe 2 hours of time with a client. And that doesn't, of course, have to be all at one time, but maybe 2 meetings with them. This is for instance, of one package that we did for a specific employer. It was, a 2 hour package, 2 meetings, and we created a customized to-do list for that client based on what their needs were, what was going on with the estate, sort of the unique circumstances of their loved one's life, and said, okay, let's, and it took us about, an hour and a half to create that list for them and say, okay, here's your customized to-do list. Here's the sequence. Here are some attorney recommendations or some CP recommendations, CPAs or financial advisors. Here's some other resources, right? And so we were able to sort of help steward them, quarterback them in the right direction to maybe streamline it a little bit better.
So helpful. And obviously, everybody's situation is unique and different.
Correct.
And so
Yeah.
it's not like, okay, here's my standard list. I mean, there are X number of standard things that everybody needs to
Right.
do, but there's all of these ancillary things that exist.
Right.
And working with you, I, I, how does it work? Somebody calls and goes, okay, my loved one just died. What do I do?
Yeah. So yeah, what I really try to do is an intake of, okay, what was their will? Was there not a will? Is there property? Is there not property? Is there dependents? Are there not dependents? Are there pets? Are there, so we're really, because it's very much of a Planko board of, okay, um, where are you in this process? And a lot, sometimes they're too early for me. And I'll say, okay, well, here's where you need to go next. You need an attorney, you need to get this process started. But a lot of times they'll come to me and they'll say, okay, my attorney or my financial advisor has told me to call you. Here's where I am. And I'll say, okay, let's get started. So we do a very thorough intake process of their loved one's life. We put together a customized spreadsheet that we share with them. And then we meet bi-weekly, every other week for 30 minutes. We do things on their behalf. And then we share with them, okay, here's your to-do list for here. We meet back in 2 weeks and we just keep the process moving, keeping them updated as I receive stuff or receive updates or we resolve something. And then we just keep going sort of according to that prescription and to-do list in the right order.
So helpful. So helpful. I want to talk again about this after loss space because I know
Yeah.
you were instrumental, along with another
Yeah.
coworker, friend,
Yeah.
person,
Yeah. Yeah.
space in the creation of the professionals after loss service
Mm-hmm.
space. Could you just share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so it was really, serendipitous finding these other women who had very similar businesses to mine. And I think I found one of them, someone was introduced, and they said, oh, I think you should know this woman. She does a little bit, I think, with the same thing. And then I met another woman on LinkedIn, Instagram or LinkedIn, I can't remember which one. And we just started networking. We said, oh my gosh, it was like finding your long lost twin of you're doing what I'm doing. You're trying to create a business with a similar model. We just started networking informally, sort of sharing war stories. How do you do this? How do you handle this? How do you navigate this? And then more people started to find out about us and they said, could you teach us how to do what you do? And another aha moment. Okay, now we have sort of proof of concept. People want to know how to do this. And we felt so strongly that there really needed to be a community or an organization of like-minded professionals with the same sort of heart-centered goal, but existing and practicing within, ethical boundaries, knowing where you're going to bump up against another professional and where you're going to hand that baton over and vice versa, right? Knowing what insurance you needed, how to actually do the work, what forms you needed, how to deal with clients who are grieving. So we really felt that we wanted to create that space for an industry that could grow and thrive and be legitimized, right? So we thought that that would not only help our businesses, but we felt like there need to be more of us, right? And we want this to exist in a way where people will understand that we have nothing but the best intentions for our clients. You're dealing with people in a very vulnerable time, right? So we want you to utilize best practices and sort of that do no harm, right? Methodology.
And because it's such a newer space, being able to create these standards, operating standards
Right.
is so important.
Right. 100%. And, we know that this is something that will only grow. The millennials outsource, that they're really good at that. So we know that there's going to be sort of this perfect space that's sort of opening up as the baby boomers are passing away. We're living longer. We have more stuff, more assets. We're further removed from family. And I think that's sort of creating this perfect storm, for lack of better words, for this profession to really step in and fill that gap.
Yeah. So I think you have a book coming out, if I
I do.
remember.
I
I wish I
do.
could come to your launch party.
I
You have a
know.
gathering
Yeah,
soon. So.
I do. Yeah, so my book I have recently finished, and it is going into all of the editing and perfecting phase. But yeah, it is called Late to Your Own Funeral: How to Leave a Legacy and Not a Logjam. And I had this personal goal. I thought I had all of these stories from not only my personal experiences, but all of these experiences working with clients and seeing the same things, the same blind spots, the same sort of repeat offenders over and over again. And I just felt I needed to sort of get this out on paper, right? Because we less of us in America have wills than we did, I think, 4 years ago, during the height of COVID, right? Only 32% of Americans have a will, or have done any estate planning. And so Houston, we have a problem if people still aren't understanding not only the importance of getting your documents, but sort of having this strategy-based approach to getting your affairs in order. So what I really wanted to do is I wanted a totally different book with horror stories, funny stories, looking at the humor, all of the things you shouldn't do, but doing it in a way that would entertain people and maybe make people say the D word, say the word death, right? And really tackling that head on, and it not being a book that bored you to death. That was my whole goal. I wanted to put the fun in funeral a little and maybe have a little lightness and laughter and sarcasm around it, because I felt that, like, sometimes that's what you need in life. So yeah, so my book is sort of a tapestry of all my personal experiences, my stories with clients, and sort of what you shouldn't do, right? And like, but seeing yourselves in these other people who thought, oh, I have a simple estate, or I've got my will, I'm all good, right? And me being, no, you're not all good.
Yeah. And oh, maybe you wrote that will 10, 15, 20 years ago. When was the last time you revisited that will?
Exactly. Yeah. And really showcasing some stories that are so bizarre that you would think it's fiction, right? I deal in sort of the dumpster fires of death every single day and I wanted to give people these stories of, these are real life things that have happened, that happen every single day. And maybe you can see yourself in this story.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. Give everybody that's here one dumpster fire that you went through.
Oh
Uh,
my gracious. I mean, I've got a client right now. We're still helping her, and she and her ex-husband had been divorced for 50 years. And she got a call from an attorney several months ago that said, surprise, your ex-husband named you the executor of his estate. And they had not spoken since their divorce 50 years ago.
oh my gosh. That is
And
quite a call to receive. You have no
and
idea where to start. Like you haven't been a part of their life.
and it, yeah, and so it was mind blowing. And she was just, it was like getting one of those Nigerian prince emails. She thought for a little bit she was being scammed or something, right? And she's like, you're not going to believe this story, but yeah, she had no idea of the makeup of his life, his assets, his debts, all of the things that need to be closed, where his titles were, where, all of these things. And it has been a complete dumpster fire.
Oh,
I told her she's going straight to heaven for doing this. This is her fast pass to heaven because she really deserves sainthood for this, but it's been a complete mess.
I can't even imagine. I'm glad she has you to help navigate and laugh at some things that probably come up too. 'Cause
I mean, every time I talk to her, she's like, you can't make this stuff up. And I'm like, I know. I know. So it's, and it's, yeah, so it can be mind blowing. And so I feel like that this is my everyday. But people think they don't realize that this could actually happen to them.
Wow. Okay, I could keep talking to you forever, but let's leave everybody. What's one thing you'd want workplace leaders to take away from our conversation today?
Yeah, I would want workplace leaders to know the sheer amount of tasks, administrative tasks that exist upon your employee's plate above and beyond the actual grief. That once the funeral is over, that doesn't mean it's over for them. And in order to help them not only lean into that grief, but to be better and to get back to their lives and the things that really matters, help them, give them the tools, lean into that of, do you need to make phone calls during the day? Do you need to go to the bank? Do you need a notary? Maybe we've got one in the workplace, right? It's like, how can we best support you and take the time you need? And I know that even though the casket has closed, that the estate is not closed, and you may have a long runway for you.
Thank you for that. And how can everybody find you?
Yeah, they can go to myafterlight.com. If you want to sign up for my upcoming book and learn when it comes out, late to your own funeral.com. And if you want to learn about becoming an after loss professional, right? And this sounds very intriguing to you, you can go to afterlosspros.com. And you can also find me on LinkedIn, on the Instagram at My Afterlight, which links to all these different places. But yeah, I'm on the Insta, the LinkedIn, all the things.
Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge today. I know I appreciate it. Everybody out there, I'm sure, is leaving with at least one nugget. And thank you, everybody, for coming.
Thank you for
Have a
having
great
me,
day.
Jody.